And I would say that the Bible is beautiful literature, and I think that there's inspiration there. But I want to go along with what you're saying, and I can understand what you mean in that, yeah, some of it is myth and oral traditions and oral stories handed down through centuries, and you can't take it word for word, but there's still I still feel like there's good lessons there. But I mean, I know you probably get that. I mean, if you're some kind of Christian, you're your own kind of Christian, and that's cool and that's great.
Yeah, my first month on Orcas Island, when I left Bethel, I got in 3 hours of service, right?
Ooh, so, bad boy, you're slacking off.
Yeah, I went from putting in hundreds of hours, if you count the hours I'm working 8 hours a day in Bethel, to doing 3 hours. And I remember thinking to myself, that's 3 hours that I regret. That was my thought. I was so burned out that I didn't want to put in another minute of service as long as I lived. And, it's like, I still did go out in service for the next, couple of years, but not much longer than like 2 or 3 years after Bethel. I was probably the last time I went out in service, I think 7, 8, or 9, 2000. I might have gone out, I think maybe in February of 2000, I think was like the last time slip I ever turned in. So, in the next couple of years, I just slowly, more and more, just had more doubts, started attending college, had even more doubts, started to be able to articulate my doubts for the first time in my life, and think critically for the first time in my life. I was just so happy learning. I loved being in college. I loved being challenged by the professors, and I really bought into the whole college thing. I was gung ho for it, and there's so many witnesses that go to college now. My ex-sister-in-law, who's here in Georgia, has a master's degree, for Christ's sake.
Well, look, it was pretty uncommon though in the 80s and 90s. I totally know what you're talking about there.
Yeah, but what I don't understand is that how someone could go to college, any kind of college. I don't care if you go to if you have a bachelor's degree, I know you took a certain amount of English courses, and English courses were like the enemy of the Watchtower. I mean, because it's not English, right? It's really a class on argument and critical thinking, and you write papers that argue a certain perspective, and teachers, the good teachers these days, hopefully, prefer you write on controversial subjects. They don't want you to write an argumentative article for Skippy over, the other brand of peanut butter, right? They want you to write about abortion and the existence of God and legalizing marijuana or whatever. They want it to be controversial. So, my English 2 course, I had just a brilliant professor. He was so wonderful. All right, so he says, 1 week he tells us, we would have to write like a 5-page argumentative essay every week. We'd have to have all these external sources, and we couldn't just any old source, right? It had to be a credible source. It had to be identified an author. And he says, well, I want you to write your heart this week. I want you to pick a controversial subject like abortion or whatever, but I want you to argue for yourself that you are right about how you feel about this subject, right? So me, I think I'm Mr. Smarty Pants, right? I'm going to write about the blood issue, all right? So I write this article that's just absolutely saturated with Watchtower literature, The problem was this, is that I technically could not use Watchtower literature as a source because Watchtower does not identify its author, and that is one of the criteria for a credible resource or a credible source, is that the author is identified. You know, you have to be honest enough with saying, I'm writing such and such, and my name is John Smith, and I live over on, 622 Pine Avenue, and you can look me up, and we could really have a conversation. I'm a real person, and we could talk about what I wrote there. And you take credit and ownership for what you write, and the reason why a credible source has to do that is because when you write your name to something that you've written, you admit that you're a human being and not God. So that's the difference. An identified author is one that admits that they're a human being.
This is brilliant. I have to interject for a minute. What you're saying is really, really resonating, really, really good. Yeah, so that Watchtower says, well, the Watchtower wrote it, or Awake says the Awake wrote it, and that's not even considered a credible source. You know what, Shawn, you're one of the most interesting people I've interviewed since I started doing this. Can I say that to you? I mean, are you flattered? Are you blushing?
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I'm just trying to be me and talk truth.
Well, keep going. Don't listen to me anymore. So you're taking this class. You write this manifesto against the blood ban, and then what happens?
Remember the article I'm writing is supporting the Watchtower's belief.
Oh my goodness! I thought you were out. I thought you were out of the cult at this point.
Well, no. This is probably in 1999 or 2000, somewhere about there. And yes, I have a lot of problems with the organization. I don't really like the meetings. I got issues. I don't really go on service that much, and I'm going to college. But as far as all of the individual beliefs, I hadn't quite worked out what I believe in or not. In fact, I had a girlfriend that was witness at the time, because I remember us talking extensively about this. So the assignment was that you write your heart, you write your belief. Well, I'm still against taking blood transfusions at this point, or so I thought, right? So I have to write this article that affirms that taking a blood transfusion is a sin, like fornication or worse, and it literally is better to die than to take a blood transfusion, and God's happy when you're dying for a blood transfusion. So,
well, you nailed the controversial part.
Yeah. And the professor was interested, too, as to when I told him what I chose as a topic, and he was interested to see what I was going to write, right? And again, a brilliant professor this was. And so writing supporting the society on the blood issue with credible sources is a very tough job. The reason is because in all of the universe and all of the history of the world, there just has never been a credible source that supports the society's opinion on a thing. There's just the Watchtower Society, and there's everybody else that has ever lived and had a brain. Okay? That's it. And the scant few doctors or whatever, or organizations that have come out and critiqued blood transfusions are very hard to find. If you go through the blood brochure and try to actually find their resources, like in a library or something like that, you won't find them. I don't know where they got their sources. They do name most of their sources in the blood brochure, but these are people, if they're doctors, it's very difficult to verify that they're doctors. If it's a publication, it's such a offbeat publication that you're like, you know, so it was very difficult documenting that paper, all right? And what I did was I cheated. I cheated by, I would really just quote the Watchtower.
Well, you were taught by the Watchtower to cheat.
Of course. So I would take these quotes from the Watchtower or the blood brochure, and I would, when you have a works cited page at the end of your paper, right? So I built a works. I would make up if there was information lacking, like the publisher, right, is information that you need in a credible source. All this information is necessary. So I would just make shit up and make it look like a credible source, and I just kind of bet that the professor was not going to actually go look up all these sources. I mean, he has like 40 students, how was he going to do that? So that's what I did, and so I built up this imaginary body of evidence that was really just all from the Watchtower or the blood brochure, and that was my paper. And I had I had my argument and whatever, and I made it in probably a traditional Watchtower fashion. But the surprise was this. Okay, after I did that paper, okay, next week, right? What are we going to write about next week? The professor says, whatever you wrote on last week, this week,
you have to do the opposite.
Opposite. You have to prove yourself wrong.
Holy cow.
Everybody's like, takes a shit in their pants at that point, because everybody's writing about, abortion and gay marriage and all this, stuff that people get really, angry about when they, and they just love their opinions and all that stuff. So now all these people are going to have to turn the gun on themselves, so to speak, and look in the mirror at their beliefs and take it apart and disprove it somehow. And what I found when I did the research on blood, again, when I did the research in favor of blood transfusions, it was extremely easy. Credible sources are everywhere, even religiously, and because I did actually use the Bible, for both of the
arguments,
articles I wrote, and it was easier, even just biblically, to argue in favor of blood transfusions. I mean, the paper wrote itself practically, and I'm like, at the end of writing it, I'm like, I no longer believe that blood transfusions are wrong. And I'm thinking, maybe deep down inside, I never agreed with it, but this is, and not only that, it was like I was angry, because I discovered the moral arguments for saving somebody's life with blood are so obvious and so intuitive and human and godly and everything like that, it's like I really do believe that people that either die or let their children die by starving them to death from blood are monsters. They're amoral monsters that have no moral sense. Something so beautiful and so obvious as to save somebody's life with your own blood. That is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard of.
Yes, it's very heroic.
It's the right thing to do to save somebody's life with your own lifeblood. Of course it is. You don't even have to explain that to a child. They already know. And so, that was a major foundational block that was removed from my mind, and then suddenly I'm like, I wonder what else I don't agree with, and then it was just over. It was really over at that point. I not believe all this shit anymore? I'm mad now. I'm mad at the completely immoral beliefs, the false prophecies. I started to do more of the research on the history and see all the false prophecies. I'm like, oh my God! At this time, obviously, you could tell I'm using the internet, right? And just the information, everything seems to be so obvious to point to the fact that the Jehovah's Witnesses is just a ridiculous, false, phony church. It's a scam. It's a scandal. It's
preach, Brother Zen. Preach.
Yeah, there's religions out there that I can affirm in a general way or a general sense. I mean, even religious organizations that I could more or less support and say, well, if that's your path, then, whatever works for you. But I just can't say that with Jehovah's Witnesses. It really is an organization that devours people, it uses people, it divides families, it breaks people up, it kills your independent spirit, it kills your heart, it puts you in a box mentally, it enslaves you mentally, it turns you into a small, petty little person, judgmental, it has so many negative characteristics that it seems like, to me, it's a dangerous cult that needs to be dealt with on a national level, like by a government and censored like Russia does. That's how I really feel about the Jehovah's Witnesses today. And there's other religions that I would feel that way about, like Mormons and Scientologists. I'm not a fan of those churches either, and I think that those churches are harmful. Mormons are like, Mormons are so charming is the problem, and you want to like them. I do like them when I meet them.
I like that Mitt Romney. He's quite a man.
Right. But then the stupidity of their beliefs is realized, and I just have a really hard time. I don't know, when people have beliefs that are so stupid and cartoonish, I don't know what's happening.
Well, I would like to make an observation here, because I've gone through that same kind of feeling. Is that you, once you see once you see the truth about the truth, it becomes so clear. It becomes so obvious. That, like when they said that in the old Bible, the scales fell from Paul's eyes and then he could see again. In other words, we can see that they're plugged into the matrix and that it's a fantasy world, and it just confounds it confounds your sense of logic. It confounds your understanding. And my girlfriend will say to me, well, don't they know that blah, blah, blah? And she'll start being reasonable and logical because she's cool and reasonable and logical. And I have to stop her, and I have to say, hold on, hun. It's a cult. You're trying to use logic again, and that doesn't work. So, yeah, it's just so out of whack with everything that we know as reasonable people. And so that's why, you're reacting so strongly, and it feels good. It feels good to say that out loud sometimes. And to me, that's part of the process that we use to clean out this junk out of our heads, is that we have to say it out loud. We can't just think on it anymore. And we need to say it to somebody else, not just to the wall or even through a keyboard. We need to say it out loud to somebody, and then get a pat on the back and a confirmation, and then hear that conversational ball being given back to us. And that's one of the things that helps us to get our minds clear of all this ignorance.
Yeah, and to hear it from somebody that's been there too is pretty important, because I've had a million therapists, and none of them get it. None of them do. None of them really understand, I guess, what I went through, because they just compare what I'm saying to some church that they've been to, and they think it's the same thing, but it's a different level of mind fuck that the Watchtower participates in. Whether I still to this day I don't know if the people at the top know what the hell they're doing, whether they realize they are using brainwashing techniques or not, whether they know that their religion is true or not. I don't know. They could be believers themselves for all I know, and maybe there's nobody at the helm of this thing. It's just a monster that took on a life of its own, and there's these people operating it now, but it's an entity that doesn't really have a soul. Mm-hmm. That's why it goes about devouring souls. It doesn't have one.
Well, and it behaves. It behaves like a corporation. It behaves like a corporation which has no morals. It only has to answer to the bottom line. And also, what you're saying about like the old story about the civilization that doesn't even know how to repair the machines that feed and take care of it anymore. So you have this new regime of leaders, quote unquote, and GB 2.0 and all these other fellows that are now in upstate New York, and they don't fully understand the machinery themselves, but they have to turn the cranks and pull the levers at the right times, or bad things could happen.
Yeah, that is pretty hilarious. Yeah, like remember Lost? I don't know if you ever watched that.
I did.
There was a section of that series where, remember, there was this countdown going on.
Yeah,
and somebody
I remember.
had to be at the button and press the button before,
Every 618 seconds or something like that.
Yeah, so, it's a good analogy, I think, for what possibly is taking place at the top. I don't know. They could be evil geniuses, and they know all this stuff. And they're doing it on purpose.
No, you were there. You were there, and I was there. You were there, and I was there. But there's not very many people that know what they're doing there. They're just making it up as they go along.
That is what it seems like. Yeah, most probably. Yeah.
Okay, so look, let me get back on track. Your life is just fascinating, and you're blowing my mind here. So you did this paper on blood, both directions. You defended it. Then you got your mind blown. You had to go back and you had to deconstruct it and, demolish it. You did, and then you realized this is a scam. So what happened then? Did you disassociate? Did you, stop going? Did you tell other people about it and get yourself in trouble? What happened?
At the time, I had temporarily moved back in with my parents because they were trying to sell their house in El Monte, and they did that at the worst time for the real estate market. By the way, they would have gained like $1 million more if they had listened to me, the only person that was telling them to wait. But anyway, they didn't. They sold their house for next to nothing. So right after 9/11 is when I ended up moving to Long Beach from El Monte, not that far. I was already commuting to Long Beach, City College at the time. And when I moved to Long Beach, I was a little bit, 20 miles away, whatever. And that was far enough for me to kind of isolate myself a little bit. And I didn't know any witnesses in Long Beach. So, I didn't exactly move my publisher card or anything like that. I didn't start attending meetings in Long Beach at all. And so I was essentially I was just ended up meeting a girl in a class who I liked, and we got along, and I just decided to ask her out on a date. I had grown a beard in the meantime, too, right?
Yay, go Beards.
So I'm incognito in Long Beach, and people are already shunning me because there was this time in back even earlier, like in 1999, I think, or maybe probably not earlier than that. I remember I said out loud to my dad and my brother Mark that I did not believe that the governing body was any kind of faithful and discreet slave from God.
Whoa,
Yeah, and since that moment, that actual accidental blurting out, a lot of my family just started shunning me right away without any question. And even my brother Danny, who was the other half of my heart and my best friend as well as brother all my life, he had two sons at the time, actually. He still does have them. He told me that he didn't want Matthew associating with me because he didn't want me to infect his 2.5-year-old little toddler with independent thinking.
Oh, and we know how dastardly and dangerous and evil and gangrenous and horrible independent thinking is.
Yeah, so obviously I already had a reputation to be an independent thinker. As soon as I started going to school to be a teacher, with academic classes, I actually went to Musicians Institute too before I went into teaching to do music and recording. But that's I didn't do that very long. I had a thirst for more academic stuff, and so I started taking those kind of classes. And philosophy of ethics was an amazing. Philosophy of ethics turned me into an atheist. I mean, instantly, it's like, you're just atheist, I mean, that was quite an amazing class.
Wait, so you hold on. So you're a born again atheist?
I was an atheist for a while. I had some admittedly drug inspired experiences that made me believe in God, and I still do believe in God. But anyway, let's see. Oh, I was telling you about my girlfriend.
Yes, you met her in a class. Go on.
I met her in a class, and I asked her out on a date. So she accepts, and I'm like, yay! It's like my first worldly date. I'm thinking.
No, now, how old were you? Whoa. How long had you been out of Bethel at this point? Like 3 years?
This is 2002 now. 2002. When I went out with Joy the first time, it was 2002.
Yeah, but I'm so you got out when, and how long has it been since you got out of Bethel that you have this date?
I left Bethel in 1996.
96. Okay, I can't be expected to remember everything you say, my friend, because you talk a lot. You frankly, you talk a lot. Has anyone ever told you that?
Actually, I don't, and I think this is just you're giving me this opportunity, and I spend so much time alone these days, and I don't have anybody to talk about this stuff with. That I'm just
Look,
it's your fault, is what I'm saying.
Hey, you know what? I'm teasing you. I love it. I want you to keep going. You're fascinating me. I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to break this into multiple parts because there's no way we can do this whole interview on one video. So I'm loving it. We've talked for roughly 2 hours now, and you're just starting to get to some more good stuff. So let's pick up where we left off. So about a few years has gone by. Quite a few years has gone by. You're in your 30s. You're taking this class. You meet this girl, and you ask her out, and she says yes.
Yeah. So we. This was when the movie Amelie. I don't know if you saw that movie. It's a French movie.
Yeah, I remember it.
Movies.
I remember it.
So Amelie's out, and it was mostly playing in the independent theaters.
Well, look. I have to interject. Your choice of movies is impeccable because if ever there was a chick flick, I mean, you picked it. The fact that that's your favorite movie of all time makes me kind of wonder. But I won't talk about that.
Yeah. Anyway. So she says some things on the date that were familiar in a way to me and odd because I had really caught fire with all sorts of worldly thinking and phrases and and it felt really good. It felt like me, for the first time in my life. And but we're sitting there before the movie starts in the theater, and I'm still learning about this girl's life. And she's telling me how she got a scholarship for a pretty good university for something by being such a good high school student, right? She gets a free ride scholarship, a 4-year degree scholarship, big score, major score, right?
Wow.
And then she said, "Yeah, but I turned it down in favor of doing a legal secretary, like 6-month course, tech school type thing." And I'm like, "What? Why in the world would you do that?" And then she just kind of hems and haws about why she did that, and she said that like her parents weren't really supporting her going to college, and she didn't have a real rational reason for why she did that. Like, I'm thinking in my mind, yeah, that's what a witness would do. I'm like, oh, great. So we see the movie, right? And I don't know something got in my head that this girl was just so much like a witness that, anyway, so I'm driving her home, right?
Right,
and
I hear you.
As it turned out, that morning I went for a jog on the beach, and I parked in the beach parking, and I forgot to put in the coins, right? So I jogged down 100 feet, and then I'm like, oh crap, and I turn around, and I run back to my car to put coins in, and there's a ticket cop writing me a ticket, and I'm so pissed off, and I curse this guy out and everything, and I was really mad about that. And so on the way home from the date, I made this joke that all ticket cops are going to go to hell, or all parking ticket cops are going to go to hell. And she's like, hell is the common grave of mankind.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it. So she was raised around the witnesses?
Okay, well, I didn't tell her that just yet. I'm like, holy shit, I'm out on a date with a witness. Like, I knew it. But she was out on a date with a worldly person because I had a beard, all right? She knows I'm not a witness, or she thinks I'm not one, right?
Oh, this is crazy, dude.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to fuck with this girl first. And I'm going to try to nail her on something.
Whoa.
Right? Pissed me off, in a way. So I had, in my car at the time, I had a cassette tape of George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. And so I stick the tape in, and the song that comes on is, my sweet Lord, hallelujah, my sweet Lord. I just happen to have that, right? So I'm like, Joy, if you listen really carefully, you can hear the secret name of God in this song. And she's like, oh, really? And then what would that be? And I'm like, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna is the name of God. I said it on purpose so she would say Jehovah back to me.
Man, you are devious.
She's like, no, that's not God's name. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Well, maybe it's just one of these other ones that I picked out. They say a bunch of stuff in that song, right? And I can't get her to witness to me. I was trying to get her to witness to me. She wasn't biting. And then finally, all the way to the end, I take her where we actually met somewhere. We met at a coffee shop. And so I took her to park by her car, and we're still talking, right, about stuff. And And I said, well, really, I believe that Jesus is God, and God is the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Oh, please, you are laying it on thick.
And I had to. She wasn't giving it up. So she's like, well, Jesus is not God. Jesus is God's Son, and Jehovah is God. And I'm like, aha! So what are you? And she's like, well, I'm a Jehovah's Witness. And I'm like, well, let me, I got to think about this. This is how this actually has happened. Oh, yeah, okay. So she says, yeah, I'm a Jehovah's Witness, right? So I'm like, oh, Jehovah's Witness, that's a cult, isn't it? And she's like, no, it's not a cult. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It's a cult. And I started just kind of like criticizing Jehovah's Witnesses for a while there. And there was finally like a pause, and I'm like, Joy, I'm a brother. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I'm a Jehovah's Witness too.
Look, you got to stop for a second. This is unreal. You're out of Bethel. I've got to recap this just so I can absorb the bizarreness of this. You're out of Bethel and you faded out. You drifted away. You moved a couple of towns away. You went from El Monte to Long Beach, which I love Long Beach. Good choice there. You're going to school. You're learning all these things. You asked this random girl that you liked. She was nice. Her name is Joy. You ask her out on a date and you're exulting. Oh my goodness, this is my first worldly girlfriend and my date with it. And you waited. Oh my goodness, I couldn't have waited as long as you. So this time goes by, and then out of the blue, you start getting these signals that she's a closeted JW. What are the odds of that? What are the odds? I mean, we're talking about, astronomical numbers here. And then you string her along and you play with her in a not in a really an evil way, just in kind of a funny way, try to get her to witness to you, and she won't do it. And you say God's name is Hare Krishna, and you and then finally you start talking Trinity to her, and then she chimes up and says, well, God's name isn't, or God isn't a Trinity, and so you get her to admit it, and then you tell her, I'm a brother.
Yeah.
That you can't make that up. That's just too out there.
Well, yeah, and imagine how that would be fucking with my head, and you're going to find out how that fucked with my head too. So, I mean, yes, the odds are astronomical, and that is exactly why it fucked with my head so badly after that.
Okay, all right.
The order is rapidly fading, for the times they are a-changing.